Welcome to Lead Poison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Lead Poison podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by jgwpainting.com.au. For all your painting and decorating needs, servicing Sydney and surrounds, please visit jgwpainting.com.au to get a quote today. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for being patient for the past month. I've been working hard between all of life's other commitments to line up guests, and I'm also happy to announce we have some merch on the way which will be up for pre-sale in the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for those, and of course I will let you know when it drops. If anyone would like some Lead Poison stickers, hit me in the DMs on Instagram, or for anything else you can contact the show at theleadpoisonpodcast@gmail.com. This evening on the show, I am joined by concert promoter and founder of Slingshot Entertainment, Trent Roden. Slingshot Entertainment was born out of Trent's passion for hip-hop and his drive to contribute to the culture. Trent, along with his team at Slingshot, are Australia's longest-running hip-hop concert promoters, and since 1993, he has been responsible for over 100 international tours and shows, both here, across the pond in New Zealand, and throughout Asia. Company Flow, Black Eyed Peas, Souls of Mischief, Ghostface Killer, MF Doom, Black Alicious, DJ Crush, Roots Maneuver, KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, Cool Keith, Mixmaster Mike, Biz Markie, and Immortal Technique are just some of the most well-respected and recognised names in hip-hop that Trent has brought to this country. His consistent efforts and dedication to putting on shows for the heads in Australia is something we can all be grateful for. Trent will soon be releasing a book titled Throw Your Hands in the Air, with photos from 25 plus years of iconic hip-hop gigs in Australia. The book is available for pre-sale through the link in today's show notes. Please subscribe, like, and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening from. Without any further delay, please welcome Trent Roden.
I know something that KRS-One was a big proponent of is like, he'd always say that, like, of course, hip-hop is the main four elements, but it's not just that either, you know? It's a lot broader than that, you know? It's media, you know, it's entrepreneurialism, you know, it's promoting, it's, you know, there's kind of the whole support structure there, you know? Everybody can contribute to, well, not everybody, but there's just other ways to contribute to hip hop culture, you know, that also is outside of just the four main elements, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what makes sort of your story so interesting, man, because, you know, I guess you really had no one before you to look at and there was no path really, was there, when you started out? I imagine back then it was, you know, you're just out on your own 2 feet trying to make things happen. It's really interesting, man.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely no guidebook, no course you can do, but, you know, even more so than that, what you're saying is there's kind of like, yeah, there was kind of like no real mentor or anyone that I could kind of try and, you know, emulate or try and get, you know, advice from.
Speaks to your character, man. I mean, you must be a go-getter of sorts. Very entrepreneurial, I think, I would imagine.
I mean, that wasn't really the kind of premise of it at the beginning. It was more just, like I was just saying, man, it was more just thinking, you know, that, you know, I was kind of immersed in hip hop and loved the music and learning about the culture, and then just trying to kind of figure out, you know, how can I be a part of it? Not so much fit in, but how can I contribute, you know? I guess that's where some, you know, like growing up in a family of like both my parents were entrepreneurs. So I was kind of like just seeing that kind of daily grind, daily hustle, you know, just trying to make stuff happen. But then also just mixing that with kind of like, you know, something that you're just so passionate about and want to be involved with and contribute. So it's kind of just like mixing different worlds together. And I'd already come from a background of like, you know, skateboarding and snowboarding, which was a bit kind of like, you know, counterculture, a bit, you know, rebellious, and a bit kind of taught me some ways of the kind of the hustle on that level, you know. So I guess yeah, it's just bringing different things together, you know.
Yeah, all those cultures, man, like skateboarding, and I can imagine snowboarding. I've never been snowboarding or been involved with snowboarding, but skateboarding especially, you see so much crossover between people that grow up skateboarding and then eventually get into graffiti or hip hop or, you know, punk music and all those sort of DIY cultures where it's just a bunch of kids going around making their own fun. You learn so much during those sort of formative years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, skateboarding, you know, from skating, I kind of, you know, really got into kind of punk music, and then sort of, you know, and then from punk kind of got into hip hop. But skateboarding was a big transition for me, and it was interesting. I was talking to someone the other day about is that I was I was working as a skateboard photographer for a magazine called Slam, Skateboard Magazine, which is iconic skateboard
Sure.
magazine from Burley Heads area. And at the time, I was like, talked to the editor of the magazine. I said, you know, hey, what about if I interview some hip hop artists for the magazine? You know, so I put, I guess, like interviews of like touring artists that were coming out at the time in the magazine. There obviously weren't that many people coming out at the time. I think I did an interview with like Naughty by Nature and well, the big one I did an interview with was the Beastie Boys. Cool. So I interviewed the Beastie Boys for Slam magazine. So that was also kind of my way of kind of, you know, bringing, you know, the hip hop into the skate world and vice versa, and trying to like fit myself in between there some way. So it was a good transition for me in that way. Yeah. And the thing with the interesting thing with snowboarding is that it's not like that today. I mean, snowboarding now is, you know, obviously it's in the Olympics and it's commercialized, and it's, you know, I don't think you would consider it where it currently is as any type of counterculture or rebellious thing. But the thing is, when I got involved with snowboarding, it was actually really kind of alternative and counterculture, because it was still pretty much banned on the snow mountains. So it was kind of looked down upon as snowboarding. So it kind of it taught me a lot of, you know, interesting things to you know, on the hustle, because it was it kind of had parallels a little bit with when I got into in the early days of Aussie hip hop, where like the mainstream, let's say the mainstream radio, Triple J or something like that, would just not even give Aussie hip hop a chance or a listen to it. And so, and record labels as well. So, so looking back on it, yeah, I had some sort of interesting correlation there that I could tap into and it was something that actually appealed to me. Like I like that kind of, you know, being the underdog and the hustle and not, and kind of having to you know, get involved with something when it's at its grassroots and when it's not really accepted and commercial yet. That appealed to my personality, you know.
Yeah, well, I guess that's exactly what you've done. You said that snowboarding wasn't allowed. What do you mean? They didn't allow, they didn't want snowboarders on the slopes?
Early days, it was like banned on the mountains in Australia. You know, it was about skiing, and obviously the whole impression of skiing. I mean, it's an expensive sport to do, so, you know, without generalizing, but I am generalizing it. In general, you know, people that would go skiing are quite, you know, well off financially, and maybe they've got the time, money to do that type of sport and that type of holiday. Whereas the early days of snowboarding, you know, wasn't all just kids with rich parents. You know, it was a lot of like just kind of skaters and surfers from the northern beaches or something, you know, from Manly, DY, Brooklyn, not Brooklyn, Brookvale, these kind of like northern beaches where skating and surfing was really big. And then a lot of those guys would just go to the snow, but it wasn't because, you know, they come from rich families. It was just something they wanted to transition from skateboarding and surfing into snowboarding. Wow. So that was kind of, whereas these days it's a totally different thing.
Yeah, man. I guess there's always a back and forth at the start of any, culture between what should and shouldn't happen. But, you know, look what's happened with snowboarding. I mean, it's worldwide, global, sort of, as you said, in the Olympics. And that's really interesting. I didn't know that about snowboarding.
The point there was kind of like the kind of more elite kind of skiers kind of look down on the snowboarders as just kind of like this, just like rebellious kids, you know, just crazy on the mountains kind of thing. It took many years to kind of get accepted and get, you know, more broader in that kind of culture. And like I said, it's obviously completely different, but from my perspective, I saw a little bit of similarities with Aussie hip hop kind of in the kind of early days of like I said, of just the music trying to be accepted outside of just the real fans that would go to the local Aussie hip hop shows. But anything broader than that, it was, you know, it was just like, it was kind of really shunned upon, you know, by radio, the media, and record label. That was an interesting thing for me to witness and be a part of.
Yeah, man. I guess a lot has changed. Can you do me a favor? I mean, these days, obviously, I guess, would you describe your role? Would you describe it as a promoter? I mean, obviously, you're running Slingshot, but is that the correct terminology? You're a promoter?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you do a lot of different things, but my question is, can you tell me what a promoter and what a manager does and what their role is in music in conjunction with artists?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when it's promoter, I kind of define it a little more specific and say concert promoter, you know, because obviously, you know, there's a difference, let's say, between like a nightclub promoter and a concert promoter, for example. And I mean, I actually first got involved with Aussie hip hop through management, so that was my first kind of doorway into the culture. Basically, with the Sydney hip hop group, the Brethren. So that's how I first really that was really my transition from being a fan of hip hop, a fan of, you know, American hip hop in the late 80s, and then starting to really get into Aussie hip hop, and then I don't really know what gave me the I don't even know what really gave me the idea or the confidence or whatever, just to go to Mystery and Wisdom of Brethren, and just went up to them at a local gig one day and said, you know, maybe I can help you guys out, you know, just sort of, I don't even know if I really used the word manager. It was more just a way of like, you know, because, you know, anything that's successful is usually built up of some type of team, you know. I mean, I'm sure even if you've got like a solo sports person, you know, they're still going to have like they're going to have a trainer, they're going to have a team around them that helps make them a success, and kind of, and I guess, you know, just quickly going back, that was also from my background of skateboarding and snowboarding, and helping, you know, getting involved in the industries of skateboarding and snowboarding in Australia, and helping some like snowboarders get contracts for sponsorship and things like that. So I was already kind of going in that direction of, for example, with snowboarding, I was never really a good snowboarder, or skateboarding, I was really never a good skateboarder, but I thought, okay, how can I be involved in it? So through photography, through media. And then I guess the same then happened with like hip hop and Aussie hip hop, is like, I didn't really dare try and get on the mic, or, you know, get on the decks or pick up a spray can. So that was also my thing of like, well, maybe I can take some of that knowledge and some of that hustle into helping an artist, um, you know, just give them some support. And I guess I was a fan of Brethren at the time, and approached those guys and was like, yeah, maybe I can just be a part of the team and help you guys out where I can.
What did you, sorry to cut you off, but what did you plan on sort of providing them? Did you have any sort of anything in mind, way back then? And I think, what was that, around 1993, 94? I mean, you must have had some idea of what you might be able to sort of help them out with.
Probably a bit earlier than that, but I didn't really come to them with like a game plan or a full proposal, and I definitely didn't come to them with any type of contract or nothing like that. So it wasn't a business decision on my part, and I just approached them more as a fan and as someone that thought, look, maybe another person going into bat on their behalf, or like talking to people on their behalf might help them. So I didn't really have any major game plan, but it was more about just giving them support and helping them organize things, whether it's studio time or helping them get some shows, or making sure they got paid, or trying to approach local radio, community radio for their music. So it was kind of more just, I guess it was more like an assistant more than a manager, in a way. How can I help you guys succeed more? And I thought, well, if I can help them succeed, then it's going to be good for me too, And so, I mean, I don't claim to be some super experienced or super manager, so I can't really talk too much on the management side of things, because I have managed other artists since Brethren, but like I said, my perspective on management was always more just about building a friendship with the artist and just being a part of the team and helping wherever I can, helping with strategy, helping with all elements of their career, And then I kind of always thought, well, if any of the artists that I work with, if any of them blow up, then I can get maybe more structured and more serious, But I think things are a lot different these days, with the potential of how big Aussie hip hop artists can go. Yeah, I'm guessing that, things are a little different now in terms of how you approach management and the type of strategy and seriousness of it.
Yeah, for sure, man.
For me, it was more just experience and passion and friendship,
What were you doing aside from, approaching Brethren at that time, and I'm sure a few other people? I mean, what were you doing outside of that? Were you just working regular jobs? Was that just something that you decided to do sort of on the side? Were you still in school?
No, I didn't. Never really had regular job. It was all just about. I think at that time I was still involved with skateboarding and snowboarding, and I was also running my own magazine, which is where the name Slingshot came from. So I had a magazine that was basically a combination of my three main interests at the time, which was skateboarding, snowboarding, and hip hop. So I kind of combined those three things into a alternative magazine. And so I was kind of running my magazine. I was still doing photography for other magazines, and I started then putting on some of my own local hip hop jams as well.
In Sydney?
Yeah, in Sydney. That was kind of transition into, I guess, being a promoter, is trying to then do a few of my own concerts, or a few of my own. I wouldn't call them concerts. I guess I'd call them jams.
I've never seen a copy, but from what I understand, it was sort of skateboarding and snowboarding, and you also had a bit of written communication in there. Is that right? Stories and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the magazine was loosely based off a magazine from the States called Big Brother, which is a legendary skateboard magazine from America, and that magazine, although it was a skate magazine, they also had other random things in the magazine that had nothing to do with skating, but that they knew that skateboarders would be interested in. It's hard for me to give an example. I don't totally remember, but it was just kind of weird alternative stuff in there. And I thought that was my concept with the magazine. It was, like I said, skating, snowboarding, and hip hop, but then I would also include other random things in the magazine. I'd do, like, I don't know, stories about I don't know, whatever, man. Like I interviewed one time this guy, Jamie from the Moon Meson archives, and I'm not sure if he's still doing it in Sydney or not, but he's the dude that if you thought you saw like an alien or UFO, you would call this guy in Sydney and he would come out and investigate it. That's fucking awesome. I did an interview with him about, about what he does in the magazine, and then I'd come up with like other interesting concepts. Like I'd come up with a thing called creative couples. So I'd interview like a guy and a girl who were together and they were both doing like interesting artistic things in their lives, and then I'd interview, guys about, with their interesting cars, so I kind of just kind of combine anything I thought was anything I thought was interesting, cool to me, I would put in the magazine because I had that creative freedom because I'd been working for magazines for many years before that. And I was kind of, and the magazines, the skating and snowboarding magazines I was working for, just seemed a little bit boring to me. I was like, like a skateboard magazine, it was like every single page was skateboarding. I was like, that's cool, but I don't know, to me, life is more than just the one thing that someone is into, So I kind of wanted to do a magazine that kind of represented a little more broader than that, And obviously in the magazine, I'd have some graph in there and some breaking in there and different stuff. Like I interviewed some artists. I remember interviewing Ice Cube at the time, which was interesting, and just all sorts of different, just random stuff in there, man. But it's what made it fun, and the people that got it. I think I ended up doing about 9 or 10 issues of the magazine, and it was most of the issues were free, and it was just. This was obviously before, way before Instagram and Facebook, and even before MySpace. It was like the only way to get the magazine was just going to some record stores. I would send it to different record stores around Australia, and limited copies, maybe like 10 copies to each store or something. And people just grab it basically for free. Or I think I had one issue, it was like $2 or something like that. And yeah, man. So
how did you reach out to guys like Ice Cube? How did you manage to get in touch with them?
I think he was out on a tour or something, and I just kind of, just kind of use the kind of media credential, to try and hustle and interview people that way. But it was a cool way for me to express myself, and it was also a cool way for me to kind of, I don't know how to explain it, man, but it was a little like, a lot of people, like when they're in their like kind of, teens or early 20s, you kind of, I don't know the right word for it, but I guess like a bit rebellious, or a bit kind of like anti-society, or maybe like, you got a bit of a chip on your shoulder, or you like, I don't know, some people get involved with, drugs or crime, or, different, kind of as a dude growing up, you're kind of like trying to find yourself, and, some of us make mistakes and, all sorts of things like that. And I guess for me, the magazine was like an interesting kind of outlet for me that was kind of my way to express myself, but I thought in a positive way, not in a negative way, and so that was, like I had some political kind of, like, well, not really political, but more like social kind of conscious stuff in there, and stuff that I thought was like messed up about the world, and I would put that in through the magazine, rather than kind of going out and, I don't know, whatever, trying to like cause ruckus on the street. I was kind of like use that as my channel,
Magazines, it's interesting. I'm a big fan of zines and magazines, and I grew up buying magazines and reading books here and there, and it's, I love the sort of technological changes that are happening in the world, and everything's sort of online. But I wonder if magazine publication is ever something that's still sort of financially viable, because I'd love to see, just as you say, independent people making little zines. You don't really see it a lot anymore because, obviously it just doesn't work. Do you think that type of thing will ever sort of pick up again and take off?
I don't know, man. I guess my magazine was more a zine. I just call it a magazine because I like the connotations of a zine. It's kind of like underground and not big, but then I also thought it's kind of limiting just to call it a zine. I kind of, wanted the
You don't want it to live in obscurity forever, if it's a good thing and people like it, yeah.
Call it a magazine. technically it was more a zine, I guess. And yeah, I'm the same as you, man. Like, you know, there was a point in my life where like magazines were just, I don't know, man. I was so passionate about magazines. Like, I'd go to the news agency and I just loved flipping through different magazines, whether it was car mags or music mags, and like searching for like the latest, maybe like the Source hip hop magazine, like, you know, waiting for the latest edition to come out from the States, and, you know, going to the news agency every day and checking, do you have it in yet? I don't know. There's like, I definitely like had a passion for magazines and zines that kind of, you know, was, yeah, that kind of led to that as well. I mean, I mean, I guess like everything is like, yeah, I guess some things, you know, because everything is online, I guess that makes some things offline more, you know, more kind of special. You know, like I was talking to a business partner of mine the other day, and he sells vinyl, a lot of hip hop vinyl. He has like a hip hop vinyl online store, and he's saying that, like, you know, vinyl sales are doing really good at the moment. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit like that. You know, it's yeah, you know, when something gets so big like digitally, then I think also then a demand for like the physical also comes into play as well.
You know, obviously you've got a natural talent for communication, man. It's clear, and I would assume that it plays a big role in your role, you know, with Slingshot as well. But is the written word something that you enjoy? Is that something that you grew up doing, you know, writing and reading and things like that?
Yeah, not as much reading, but writing, man. Yeah, exactly. Well, that was also part of with the like I used to write articles for other magazines, and then like creative writing. You know, I did enjoy. I don't really do it much now, but yeah, you know, I used to like writing stories in the magazine and things like that. You know, I found an interesting way to communicate with people through writing, and just setting up different scenarios and scenes, and, you know, trying to
Mm.
tap into emotions through writing.
Yeah, for sure, man. I enjoy writing. Yeah, I don't read. I probably don't read as much as I should, but I definitely enjoy writing. It's something I'm trying to get my kids sort of understanding, because I don't know if it's just me sort of being old and like, oh, people aren't writing as much as they should and rah rah. But I think it's important to know how to at least just write something that's on your mind in a clear, concise way. It's, you know, it's sort of a skill that I see. Like, you don't really have to do it for anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I don't know, man. I guess on a personal development level, it's important, but, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't, you know, like things have just changed so much.
Speaking of change, man, I mean, you must have seen, you know, you've been doing what you're doing for, I guess, almost 3 decades, and you would have seen hip hop change a lot since then. Tell me about, you know, those early years, you know, working with Brethren and Metabase and Breath and moving on to other artists. How important were those sort of formative years looking back now? Did they play a big role in how you operate now, and do they mean a lot to you, those first few experiences? I imagine your first couple of shows would have been really nerve-wracking and, you know, a lot of moving parts. Do you sort of look back on those years and think, oh my God, how did I get that done and whatnot? Or
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot's changed, but yeah, I mean, I look back on those years, you know, with good memories, and, you know, with a certain level of pride, and you know, it was cool. I mean, there's yeah, there's still lots of other people in the scene, you know, doing
mm,
as much and if not more than me. So I don't really, you know, there's people I looked up to at the time, and kind of, like I said, man, it was me just trying to work out a way that I could kind of contribute and fit in. Um, and I guess looking back on it, there was, you know, when you're doing something, when you're in the middle of doing something, you don't really think, well, usually you don't really think about maybe the significance or the how it's going to be in the future. You know, you just kind of do it at the time, and you kind of just make it happen, and then whatever, however history looks back on it, that's just the way it is, you know. So you kind of don't realize the significance. And also, you know, back then, like it was hard, like, for example, like with you know, when I was involved with Aussie hip hop, it was hard for me anyway. It was hard for me to even see a day that it would be so big and accepted. Like, at the time, to me, it felt like it was just always going to be, really underground thing. I felt like me and many other people were working hard at trying to make the music better and more accepted. But other people that were involved at the time, they may have a different perspective. They may have had the vision that one day, Aussie hip hop was going to be massive. But I don't know. I never really. I didn't think. I don't know. I just didn't really think either way of the future. I was just kind of immersed in it, and I just took it for what it was at the time, and kind of enjoyed it for what it was, And but I had no idea actually that it would really become, as big as it is, or anywhere close to that. And yeah, so that was kind of how I look back on it, I guess.
So you never imagined that you would make a career out of doing what you do and bringing artists in from overseas, and it seems like you maybe subconsciously had some form of insight. A lot of people wouldn't have the drive to stick at it for as long as you did and to see the changes.
Well, I guess what I was just talking about then was more about like Aussie hip hop, But in
Yeah.
terms of like starting to do touring and concerts, yeah, I guess that was a little different for me. Like I definitely had more of a vision there that it could be bigger. So yeah, when it came to like bringing international artists and putting on concerts, I kind of like. Yeah, I mean, I guess I hoped it would be bigger because I hoped I would just be able to keep doing bigger concerts or bringing out bigger artists. But that before I started touring artists from the States, I mean, there had already been quite a few international tours that had happened, but it was just on like I said, it was on that kind of like Naughty by Nature, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, that kind of level of that were big in like the late 80s, early 90s, So there had been tours like that had kind of proven that, there can be big artists that to come to Australia and do concerts. I guess where I was coming from is I then tried to turn it into something full-time and dedicated, So before I started, there were some promoters bringing some hip hop artists, but they weren't an actual hip hop promoter, It was like something, and then they would bring out a big hip hop artist. So it's cool and showed that there was the demand and the excitement there and the interest. But I kind of like felt like, well, I wanted to dedicate myself kind of full-time to just doing hip hop concert tours. And I also wanted to try and bring out, this was in the early 90s when that kind of, when the early 90s style of hip hop really started, I guess, what people call the golden era of hip hop, really started just blowing up, which wasn't the really commercial acts, And that's kind of where I kind of fitted myself into, my interest went to hip hop is kind of more on that, underground American hip hop stuff.
Were you holding shows like for local MCs in Sydney before you started bringing international acts in?
Yeah, I did a couple local concerts in Sydney. Local acts, yeah, only local acts. So it gave me a little bit of experience to put on some concerts, but I didn't do many, to be honest. Maybe I did 2 or 3 parties of my own that were all local artists. Before I started trying to do international stuff, yeah, I gave a bit of experience with just booking some artists and working with some venues and trying to do some marketing. And obviously, those days marketing was completely different to what it is today.
Yeah, yeah.
I just did 2 or 3 local concerts, and then, like I said, then kind of things just took over doing more international stuff.
Do you remember any of the acts at those local shows? Are they any of those guys still around?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously the guys are all still around, but whether they're still like out there doing music, I'm not totally sure. I mean, the main event I did was called Spooky Tricks. So we did 2 or 3 of these Spooky Tricks events, and which I did with another guy, and yeah, I mean, I had on there Yeah, I mean, there's different artists on there. You know, there's a group called Voodoo Flavor, which were cool. We had MC Trey was on there once. I think artist called Sleek the Elite. Like it was, I think Brethren was on there. I'm not sure about Death Wish Cast. I don't think they were actually on my parties that I put on at the beginning. But yeah, man, I mean, there's quite a few, and there's quite a few DJs that I had on the lineup as well. I think some of those guys are still spinning.
Do you remember who, was there a moment where you sort of booked your first international act, and, was that a big moment for you when you went from putting on the Spooky Trick shows to booking an international act? Do you remember that period of your life?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I kind of had a little bit of a transition where I got booked. There was a rock festival called Somersault. I'm not sure what year it was now, but maybe 90, maybe 90, 92 or something like this, maybe. And this festival, Somersault, is a promoter called Steve Pav, who's a big promoter in Australia, and he was the main promoter that brought out the Beastie Boys. I think he also brought out Nirvana and many like classic artists to Australia. And he approached me to do a side tour, which was a record label called Mowax from the UK, and he wanted to bring out this like Mowax artist to do like a side tour with Somersault. So this guy Steve Pav, he approached me about being the kind of tour manager and putting the concerts together for this side tour, Mowax tour. And the main artist on that Mowax tour was DJ Shadow, I was a big fan of his music at the time. And this was really when like instrumental hip hop was really big. And DJ Crush, DJ Shadow, groups like that, James Lavelle or his group Uncle, so stuff like that. And so that was interesting because that was my first kind of experience working with international artists. And although I organized the concerts, I wasn't the main promoter. I was, I guess, the tour manager. So I would drive the artists around and look after them. But it gave me some great experience. So that was kind of my really transition from putting on some local concerts to then putting on my own international concerts, was this in-between experience that I had, which was really valuable. Back to your question of do I remember? So the first international tour, so there was a DJ from Brisbane called DJ Sheep, and Bevan, he was representing a hip hop magazine from I think from San Francisco called The Bomb Hip Hop Magazine, which was a legendary classic hip hop mag from the States. And he was like the Australian representative for The Bomb magazine. And he approached me, I think during the Brisbane show that I did with this Mowax tour, and said, what about we work on something and bring someone out next? So we brought out DJ Qbert, and that was my first kind of international tour that I put my own money into and was kind of more responsible for it. And but yeah, man, I remember the night before the tour started, I remember having this like panic attack. I think it's the only time in my life I've actually had a panic attack. It was really intense because I kind of like, I guess I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I had money on the line, and I had people bought tickets, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and so it was pretty intense. And we didn't, and I remember we just bought them out on I just bought him out on a tourist visa, which like technically is illegal, for an artist to come to Australia and perform.
That would have added to the anxiety, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that definitely added to the anxiety of like just coming out on a tourist visa. So I was like, are they is he gonna get let in? So it was like, yeah, it's pretty at the time, yeah, it was pretty crazy, but we pulled it off and it was great. It kind of like set the wheels in motion for me to then, wanting, okay, we've done a DJ, because the Mowax tour was all DJs, and then we did DJ Qbert, which was great. But then I was like, okay, I want to move into MCs, because that was my real kind of, I guess what really excited me always about hip hop was was emceeing, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that era was very DJ heavy too. Like, it was really popular at that time. An amazing era of hip hop. You mentioned DJ Crush. Did you bring him out early on, or did you bring him out later as well? Or was that around that time?
I don't think he was on that first tour, but yeah, I've done many shows with Crush in Sydney. Actually, I think maybe 5 or 6 shows with Crush in Sydney.
Wow, yeah. Have you spent much time with him? Do you remember much about him, or what kind of a person he is?
He doesn't speak much English.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was interested to ask.
I'm not sure if he can or he can't, but he doesn't when he's
Yeah,
in
right.
Australia.
So does that require a translator or something? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, his manager is like his translator as well. So the experience, the communication I've had with him has been always minimal because he doesn't really speak much English. His energy is real positive, and he's really friendly, smiling, and no attitude at all.
Yeah.
Super cool guy, but just hard to really sit down and have much of a conversation with.
Yeah. Really intriguing character. I mean, I love his music, obviously, and he's got an interesting story from what I can tell.
Yeah.
How much time, in those early years, and even nowadays, how much time are you spending with artists when they come out? I mean, is there a requirement of you to sort of, what is the requirement for you? Do you have to sort of showcase Australia to the artist? Is it up to them how much communication and contact you have with them, or do you feel responsible to sort of be there with them and take them around? I mean, what's your role in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, my role has sort of changed over the years, But in the early days, I felt like I was an ambassador for Australia, an ambassador for hip hop in Australia, not an ambassador to the world, but an ambassador to these artists. So I was
For
kind of
sure.
introducing these artists to Australia and to hip hop in Australia. So so I felt like kind of a responsibility, but I also felt a pride. I was like I was proud of us, proud of being Australian, proud of Australia, and I'm proud of Australian hip hop, and introducing all of that to these guys from the States who some of them had never been out of America before. Some of them, Australia might have been their first international tour. Some of them might, or if not that, it's definitely the furthest they'd ever been from America was to get to Australia. So it was really cool to go, hey, here is our country, here's each city, and here's the, friendly people, and not just that. It was like, I think a lot of hip hop artists at the beginning that I brought out, they were like pretty stoked, pleasantly surprised about the passion and the knowledge that Australians had for hip hop.
Mm.
Because being in America, they really had no idea. Come and do a concert and see people like rapping their lyrics, but it's not. It was about the knowledge that Australian audiences had for their music, but it was also just the knowledge that Australian audiences had for hip hop in general and our own local scene in Australia that they were really impressed with. And so I felt like proud to be able to be the connection between those two different worlds, and kind of showing Americans where obviously, hip hop culture, started and formed. It was cool to show these guys, hey, there's something going on here in Australia, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can imagine it would have been surprising to some of them.
Yeah, that was exciting in the early days, and I guess I would spend what time I could with the artist, because I also just enjoyed just seeing life from their perspective, and just getting the influence of American hip hop and everything that their experiences, cool just to have that influence and spend time with them, whether it was like going to the zoo, or whether it's like going to out for dinner, or just stuff that's kind of outside of the concert, but just doing kind of other stuff like that. But even just like traveling with them, getting on planes and stuff like that. Like it was yeah, it was cool. So I would spend as much time as I could, I guess, just to show them that I was trying to give them a good experience in Australia. And yeah, but over the years, that sort of changed a little bit, and it also changes depending on who the artist is and how big they are, or if I've, like some artists I would bring out many times. Let's say like Ugly Duckling or something, um, or Blackalicious or some of these sort of artists that I kind of almost like built the Slingshot brand on some of these acts that I'd bring out multiple times.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, build a bit more of like a friendship and
Yeah, I guess once you do it a few times, you probably get quite close to these guys.
yeah, some artists I'd bring out at maybe just the one time and they were, you know, a bit on a bigger level. So there wouldn't be as much of a personal connection there. It would just be a bit more kind of business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a fan, it must have been amazing as well. You know, outside of your work commitments, it must have been amazing to meet all these guys that you've probably been listening to for half your life, and then to see them face to face. It must have been big moments.
Yeah, I mean, 100% because, you know, like in the concert, I'm just a fan like everyone else, like all the other 500 people or 1,000 people or 5,000 people, however many people there. I'm really the same as everyone else there. I'm just like singing all the lyrics. The moment is overwhelming that I'm like seeing an artist that I'm a fan of in front of me perform. You know, I mean, it's definitely takes it to another level. That you know that I'm thinking, okay, I'm the one that actually brought them out or made it happen, or I'm getting to see the concert from a different perspective on the stage or stuff like that. It's kind of the icing on the top. It's like just that ultimately I'm just a fan of. I mean, I'd say like pretty much, maybe not 100%, but I'd say 99% of the artists that I bought out, I was just a mad fan of their music anyway. So yeah, it was a cool, it is a cool experience when that happens for sure.
In those sort of after DJ Qbert, and then I'm assuming, many others after that, how many acts would you bring out a year when you sort of got rolling? Would it be one a year, two a year? Would you have multiple people here at one time? Like, did it start to pick up, quite quickly?
I mean, it's a good question. And looking back, I kind of wish I'd brought out more artists
Yeah,
at the time because, when for the first, I don't know, whatever, man, I don't know, first 10 years or something like that, I was really the only one bringing out,
certainly.
American hip hop artists. So looking back on it, I probably should have done more, but I don't know how many, maybe like 5 or 6 a year or something like this,
Yeah, right.
for the
Okay.
first couple of years, or I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what stopped me from doing more, to be honest. At the time, looking back on it, I should have brought out an artist every month. I think it was just also like kind of the market was just new because I was kind of like I was trying to create a market where there wasn't a market already. Like I said, that for doing international hip hop concerts, it was only the really big commercial stuff that was happening. I was kind of like, trying to create this demand. I mean, I knew it was there, but it's like, like there was no like social media to promote, so it was a lot more hands on with the marketing, and I was using kind of my own money saved up. Like I had no financial backer or no family money or anything like that involved. So it was all kind of like, I guess I was a bit limited to my own finances and limited to just thinking, would people want to see an artist? Would people want to go to a concert every month? I thought maybe not. Maybe part of the speciality of it was just, having a concert every few months, whereas
Mm.
that obviously changed a lot over the years where there was like, it would be, every month or, sometimes two
Yeah.
concerts on the same night or whatever.
I can imagine there's a lot of moving parts, man. So even 5, 6 a year, that sounds like there'd be a lot of work to do. Can you walk me through like what's the process? Do you reach out to an artist and then you just basically say, "Here's your plane ticket. I'll see you in a month," and then you go out and try and sell tickets? Is there? I would assume there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the process has changed over the years a lot, of course, like, 25 plus years of doing it, that the process has changed. But in the
Mm.
early days, in the early days, it wasn't even by email. It was like just by phone, to be honest. I'd be like on the phones, just calling America and asking one manager, do you have a contact for the manager of another artist? So it was very much phone work, and also me going to the States quite a bit in the early days, trying to connect with artists that way. So it was definitely a lot more hands on and a lot more of a challenge than it is today, you know. And just trying to contact them and say, "Do you want to come to Australia?" And some of them thought I was crazy, you know, because it was
Yeah.
like they, you know, like they had no idea they had fans in Australia, or they'd never been asked to go to Australia before. So it was like, you know, and some of them were like just jumped at the opportunity straight away, and others were kind of like, "Nah, I'm not interested," you know. And it was, I guess, a
Yeah.
lot of it depended on what stage of their career they were. Actually, not about the stage, but about how big they were in America at the time. So, if it was an artist that was sort of starting to blow up in the States, what I could offer them to come to Australia wasn't really enough to get them interested. You know, like
Yeah.
they could just play a show in New York and make a lot more money, and they didn't want to get on a 14-hour flight from LA. You know, whereas
Yeah.
other artists, some artists that are a little more independent or a little more on that kind of hustle, were like, yeah, let's get on a plane and let's do it. You know.
I guess a good example of that would be the Black Eyed Peas. I imagine, I think you brought them out, didn't you? And I imagine it would have been early on in their career.
Yeah, well, I first brought them out with Big Day Out because I used to. I was like the kind of hip hop. I don't know what you call it, hip hop representative for Big Day Out for many years, and so I would sort of pitch different um, different acts to the Big Day Out, and pitch to them why I thought it would be good, and you know I thought they've got potential to be bigger in the future. So there's quite a few tours that I did, like Jurassic 5. Um, Black Eyed Peas, Lupe Fiasco. There's quite a few artists that I kind of pitched to Big Day Out to tour, you know. And so when we made it happen, and yeah, Black Eyed Peas, that was the first one. The first time to Australia was with Big Day Out, and I was kind of like the kind of, I don't know what you call it, co-promoter of the tour. And then after that, I brought them back again for their own solo like headline tour.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really cool, man. Tell me about Earshot Music. I know that, you know, in the early 2000s you had Earshot Music. Can you tell me a little bit about how that formed? And I'm reading on your website that you're thinking about doing something with that again. Is that right?
I don't know. I'm not sure about doing something again with it. But it was just, I guess, the opportunity arose that, you know, I thought, well, there's quite a lot of American acts that I've got contact with that are releasing cool albums independently that are
Mm,
not being released in Australia. So I thought, you know, maybe I can help release them in Australia and get them on local radio. And then I thought it would also, um, I'd seen, obviously, you know, massive promoters, you know, like, you know, Frontier Touring, Elusive, you know, with Gadinsky, you know, had record label and the touring, and I saw that another big promoter, Michael Chugg, he started his own record label, and it sort of made sense to kind of have the touring and a record label together, because I could release if I could release an album of an artist and it would do well, then I could tour that artist and it would all kind of be a nice synergy together. So that
yeah.
was kind of the idea behind it. And
Do you think that's still a possibility in in sort of the climate of music these days?
yeah, I really don't know, because when I started this, it was kind of like just in the last few years of CDs, you know, like just before digital music. So I kind of like, I was a little bit late to the game, but I just got in like the last few years,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, of when actual physical sales was still around, you know, and I kind of like stopped it when digital just really completely took over, and then I wasn't as passionate about running the label based on digital. Lasted, you know, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 years, something like that. It was cool. We released some good stuff, you know, dope
Yeah.
artists called Gun. We did release some albums from Ugly Duckling. Uh, you know, other group called Time Machine. Just cool stuff that I would find, and it was cool to be able to release it locally in Australia.
Obviously, like Australian hip hop has grown, you know, to huge levels at the moment with, you know, a lot of underground artists and people reaching commercial success as well. Do you keep your eye on the Australian scene now and sort of think about reversing the roles and getting involved with Australian artists and taking them overseas and things like that? Is that something that you focus on ever?
Yeah, it's a good question. It would be cool, but I haven't found a way. I mean, I've always thought over the years that my biggest contribution to to Australian hip hop was just giving the opportunity and the exposure to, you know, Australian artists to be on as support act for
Right.
the international acts that I brought out.
For
So that
sure.
was, I think, my main. You know, hopefully when people look back at it, that would be my main contribution to Aussie hip hop. You know, like for example, I mean, you know, if you ask the Bliss and Esso guys, I think the second or third show they ever did was a show with me, like supporting Black Alicious at the Metro, you know. And I think some of the early shows of Hilltop Hoods were like supporting some of the acts that I toured in Adelaide, and so,
Wow.
you know, so it was cool to be able to give the opportunity to some of these acts that were still in their formative years, you know, give
Yeah.
them the opportunity at the time of being on the biggest stage they would have been on, you know, performing to the most people they would have performed at that stage in their career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of like feel like that was kind of I don't know, I guess kind of like a byproduct of what I was doing with the touring international acts, is that I was proud to be able to, yeah, you give that opportunity to a lot of different Aussie acts over the years
Mm.
to be on stage with artists that hopefully they looked up to and give them an interesting experience, something different at the time.
Yeah, I guarantee you those gigs would be highlights of those guys for sure, man. Looking back on their careers.
Just on that note, it's like I remember when I bought out KRS-One, you know, it was great to be able to book Death Wish Cast as like the national support for
Right.
that tour, you know. So I felt like it was kind of like something that I could give back to those guys as a respect to them and being such legends in the scene, um, and just, yeah, putting them on stage with I think I would think one of their inspirations and icons of KRS-One, you know. So many examples like that, where I think that's been my kind of biggest contribution to Aussie hip hop, you know.
Yeah, man. No, it's a huge contribution, man. It's amazing. I would assume that you've had a lot of communication and maybe even a working relationship with record labels like Universal Music, EMI, and things like that. Would I be right in assuming that you've come into contact with those sort of conglomerates of music business?
Yeah, I mean, what would happen is, you know, from doing the tours over the years, is that, you know, I would connect with some major labels in Australia that maybe started releasing. I don't know, for example, like Far Side. When I toured the Far Side, you know, they had their albums out on EMI Music at the time or something like that. That would inevitably get me into these buildings and meeting with the label managers and things like that were responsible for these albums in Australia, and a lot of them kind of didn't really have any idea on how to promote, let's say, a Far Side album in Australia, because if you think about it, in these corporate record labels, you know, like a label manager, I mean, on their desk at any one time, you know, let's say this is back in the, you know, in the 90s, you know, I don't know, like, you know, they would have like, I don't know, I can't even think of examples, you know, but on their desk, they would have a range of artists that, you know, they would have like from the most pop artist at the time, you know, to some
Right.
like heavy metal act, you know, to some like, you know, whatever kind of act. And then in amongst that, they would have like a Far Side album, you know? So it's kind of like, I guess their job, you know, at the label was just to kind of promote whatever record came onto their desk from the head company in America, saying, "Hey, you got to promote this in Australia." And so that's where I guess some, you know, over the years they would call me up. I'd be like, "Hey, can you give us some advice?" So I ended up being like kind of a consultant on different releases and to help them promote the hip hop albums in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a buzz for me because it kind of got me into the front door of some big offices, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I did want to ask you, obviously you're joining the Zoom chat from Jakarta. When did you decide to take Slingshot to Indonesia, and why did you do that?
Yeah, I've been doing like Slingshot Asia for quite a long time now, man. Maybe 10 years or something like that. So I just thought um,
Did you see some sort of gap in the market in terms of music there?
I just thought maybe there's opportunity. Like if I'm bringing artists, all the way to Australia, I thought there's opportunity to kind of try and do some shows in Asia as well with some artists. And sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't worked. I mean, what I mean by that is, some artists that I've brought out, we come to Asia first, or they do Asia afterwards, and some we don't, just depending on the situation. And sometimes I'll bring an artist just to Asia for a show and not to Australia at all. Not specifically Indonesia, but that's kind of where I'm based in Bali, or a half based between Bali and Sydney. But I've brought quite a few artists to Indonesia over the years, quite a lot. But then also other cities in Asia as well. Done stuff in Japan or in Singapore or Malaysia or
what's the hip hop culture like in Indonesia specifically? I mean, are the crowds quite receptive? Is it a movement over there? Is it quite big? I would have no idea, to be honest.
yeah. It's well, I mean, they've got their own local scene, with local hip hop artists rapping in Indonesian. Bahasa is the name of the name of the language, and so there's a lot of local Indonesian hip hop artists, but then there's a lot of I mean, just American hip hop is also really big here, and a lot of Indonesians, they study in like America or Australia or something like this. They go to university in the States or in Australia, and so that's also their kind of introduction and into hip hop. So there's but then a place like Bali, which is a tourist island, you've got people there from Europe and America and Australia and everything. So
That's a good point.
there's always going to be people there that want to see hip hop concerts. Yeah.
Would you say it's easier to sell tickets in those countries than it would be in Australia?
No, it's no, actually the opposite because no, because it's harder to sell tickets in Asia because the ticket prices are lower and it's just a different system with sponsorship and things like that. It's a bit harder. In Asia there's a lot of kind of promotional events where like an artist might perform, like the concert might be free, for example. You bet it's sponsored by like a big company that will just pay for it all. Yeah.
Tell me, man, how's the pandemic hit where you are, and how has it, more importantly, affected what you do? I assume it's had a pretty big impact.
Yeah, man. Well, we haven't done any tours for I can't. I think the last tour I did was maybe February 2020. So just before, I think it might have been Lyrics Born. And then just before Lyrics Born, I had Ghostface Killer out in New Zealand for New Year's Eve, and had Dead Prez out in like December 2019. So it's kind of like Dead Prez, Ghostface Killer, and Lyrics Born. And then after that, obviously, same for everybody. Everything's shut down, and I haven't done any tours since then, man. So I've had to kind of. I mean, for me, it's actually, it's been strange, man, because it's kind of all I've known for 20, 25 years is putting on concerts, and kind of having it stop was pretty intense. But it's also, I don't know, it's also given me a bit of a rest, bit of a break from doing it as well. It allowed me to focus on other business ideas and ventures and things like that. Yeah.
There's a lot of adapting that needs to take place when you get told that you can't do what you're usually doing, and going on 2 years, it's quite a long time, man. So I imagine it's been a little bit of a headache as well. Was there shows that you had to postpone that you had sort of organized for the past 2 years?
I don't think I had anything booked that I had to cancel. But yeah, it's been intense for the whole entertainment music industry, and particularly for artists. That's their livelihood is they can't perform anymore. For so long is pretty intense. So the whole industry has been hit pretty hard. I mean, for me, I've been able to transition into some other stuff and have a few other businesses as well that I work on. So it's hasn't been the end of the world for me. And like I said, it's been a nice little break and let me kind of reset and refocus for when the time's right to start touring again. But for other people, I know and hear about, it's it's been pretty tough.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. How big is the team at Slingshot? Do you have a team?
Yeah, I mean, I have a great team in Sydney, and it's probably a core like it's about a core 10 people, I'd say. You know, that
Interesting.
kind of help with the concerts and make it smooth and kind of and then around Australia, I have some great kind of partners, you know, that I work with on, you know, that I partner with on shows and tours, and they work on marketing with me and stuff like that. So
I imagine it's impacted them quite heavily as well.
yeah, for sure, man. Exactly. I mean,
Mm.
everyone's had to try and work out what else can they do, or you know, or just ride it out, you know. And but yeah, as I was saying, like when I was talking about getting involved with brethren to help them build a team and help them success, it's been the same with Slingshot over all the years. You know, I've had, you know, awesome people that have been, you know, along for the ride for many years. You know, that have helped make it a success. You know, which has been a blessing. Yeah.
Now, what's your prediction when you're looking to the future that things are going to go back to normal? How do you feel about the next couple of years in terms of Slingshot in particular? Are you just sort of riding it out and waiting to see what happens? Or, you know, because 2 years is quite a long time to not do what you would traditionally do. Does it seem like it's coming to an end over there, especially in Indonesia?
I really don't know. You know, I'm hopeful that we can do some tours in Australia again. You know, maybe some this year. I'm hopeful it's possible. I mean, it's just you know, obviously it's a bit unpredictable, isn't it? Like what's going to happen, and with different restrictions that sort of come and go, and also you know, things like, you know, Western Australian border not being open to the rest of the country and things like that make things logistically complicated. But yeah, I'm hopeful, man. We can start doing some tours again, and you know, for me, it's just sort of working out, you know, what artists, you know, people would want to see, and you know what we can do to continue the legacy, you know.
I guess, you know, one of the main reasons I wanted to chat with you today was because I saw your new book that you've got coming out, Throw Your Hands in the Air, and that was sort of why I reached out. Was that a product of not having, you know, shows to organize? Did you decide to do that during that pandemic period?
Yeah, 100%, man. It was just one of the things that sort of came up when I was sort of brainstorming is, you know, what can I do during this time, and kind of, I guess, consolidating everything that me and my partners and team have worked on over the 25 plus years, kind of consolidating that into a book seemed like the right time to do it during this pandemic time, you know. And so that was kind of the idea, the motivation behind it. And yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I probably, you know, could have or should have done it earlier, but you know, that's the way things go. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. We have it. It's actually in print at the moment, and we've done quite a few pre-solds of the book, and we'll have it in a few hip hop stores around the country, and people
Beautiful.
can still buy it online. So um, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, the book has been an interesting process because I've never put out a book before. Obviously, I've done the magazines and things, but it's a completely different process and experience, and it's sort of the book. What it started out as really became something completely different. You know, at the beginning, I
Yeah.
was just going to do it as kind of like a poster book and just have, you know, I guess just a couple, just pages of artwork from tours, and people can just flip through the pages and just see tours, shows that they've been to, and then it kind of started getting more detailed than that. You know, start adding in a few little stories, added in photographs from concerts, added in extra things like about the Eshop record label and about the Urban Expressions hip hop festival we did, and I also ran a nightclub in Sydney called Step Forward as well for 4 years, a
Wow.
hip hop club. So I
Where was
kind of
that?
started. That was at Good Bar on Oxford Street,
Okay. Yeah.
and and so I kind of just started, bringing everything together that we've kind of done over all these years, and putting it all into into one book. And
Yeah. It looks amazing, man. I'm really looking forward to it. It looks really good.
yeah, it's I mean, some of the Slingshot crew have already got their copies, and the response has been real positive. I mean, it's mostly a coffee table book. It's not like a solid read. There's a few kind of dedications in there, and a few little stories, but it's mostly a visual thing. But another cool element is that there's a lot of QR codes all the way through the book. They can kind of check out the poster, they can see some photos from the concert, and then they can scan the QR code, and then it'll take them to some footage of the concert, or it will take them to, there's interviews as well in there. Like we've got Tech Nine interview, we've got Big Daddy Kane interview, maybe a few others I can't remember now. So the QR code will also take them to an exclusive interview that was done in Australia during the tour, And so and then on the last page of the book, there's a QR code that you can scan that you can watch the full KRS-One concert from Melbourne, full 2-hour concert from when he walks out on stage to the very end. So it's like it's pretty special, and that's like a private link that you only get when you buy the book.
Did you document a lot of the shows, with video cameras and things like that over the years?
We did some, man. I mean, regrettably, we should have done more than we should have documented more than we did. But there was enough. There was enough to create a book, enough video stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of video stuff out there, that people have and everything, and that was one element. Maybe we'll make a second edition and open it up to people to contribute their own private photos and video from the tours and put all that together, maybe. But in this first edition, there's definitely some cool there's some cool footage and cool stuff in there,
So do you think that maybe it's something that you'll do again, just publishing, a book or a magazine type thing or anything like that? Is it something that did you interest did the process interest you enough to do it again?
Yeah, I guess like anything in life, like it's important you just sort of start on something and make it happen, but things also become a lot more work than you think it will be at the beginning.
For sure.
But I guess that's what makes it rewarding when you're completing the task. But I think it's been a little overwhelming. I think more so because just because I'm so connected to it. It's not like, I don't know, almost. I don't know what it's like to put out an album as an artist, but I almost feel like it must be a similar experience, just of like, you're kind of representing yourself and but kind of everything kind of has to be perfect or as close to perfection as you can make it before you kind of release it out to the world. I felt like the stakes were kind of high for me just because it was sort of documenting, over 25 years of kind of my life and of other people's lives and experiences. Yeah, so I kind of felt like, I felt like quite a lot of pressure, but it was also not outside pressure, but kind of internal pressure myself. And but it was also exciting and rewarding to make it happen, and hopefully people can get their hands on a copy and enjoy it. I think it's a sort of book that that people that have gone to concerts over the years, it'd just be cool for them to have it in their collection, something they can kind of flip through or show their friends or show their kids or whatever, like, hey, I was at this concert and this is cool memories.
100%. Can you tell people, just while we're talking about the book, can you tell people where they can pre-order it and or where they can get it when it's released?
Yeah, but at the moment I've just done a deal to sell it exclusively online with a online hip hop store called Rap Goods, RAPGEZ. People can Google that, and then they'll find the book. But I'll give you the link, and you can post that direct link up. But they can also go the direct link through my Instagram as well, just at Trent Slingshot. And on my in my bio on the Instagram is a direct link to buy the book as well.
Did you publish it sort of in-house, or did you get a publisher to print it or anything like that?
Yeah, at the moment it's independently published. I just did it myself.
Beautiful.
So I'm the kind of creative director on the book, like, worked on the design of it and obviously the content.
Yeah.
And I've just published and printed it myself. And that's the way it's going at the moment. I mean, there's a couple of shops in America that have shown interest to sell it as well, which would be cool. At the moment, yeah, it's just people can just buy it directly from Slingshot at the moment. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, man, you've put on a few hip hop events in the past. Is that something ever that you think Slingshot would ever be involved with again here in Australia? Like a hip hop festival with local artists and things like that?
Yeah, possibly, man. I mean, I've been involved with a lot of festivals, but it's more been like just like a lot of festivals in Australia have booked hip hop artists from me or have asked for kind of consultancy on how they can bring hip hop into their festival. But that's kind of been more like, I guess like rock. Yeah, whether it's like Field Day or Big Day Out or In the Grass, all sorts of festivals, I've worked with over the years that we've kind of introduced hip hop, and it's always gone down really well because, there's a lot of, there's a lot of music fans out there that are into hip hop, but they're also into rock and into, electro or, all different styles of music. So at a music festival it works really well, of course. But in terms of me doing my own festival, I guess there's always possibility. It's just about teaming up with the right type of people,
Yeah, no, I mean, the only reason I ask is I love seeing those types of things happen, and I wish there was more. And I guess I was just interested to see if it was something that was on your mind ever, coming back to Sydney, if you had thought about putting on events like that again, outside of international acts and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I imagine it's pretty hard to do as well to make it financially viable too, which would be a big factor.
yeah, I mean, the thing I kind of learned over the years of being involved with this is it's not good to say no.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good to be just open to possibilities and ideas, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the way I am with life or with business because it's hard to know what's going to work and what's not going to work or what people are going to enjoy or not enjoy, and it's and I feel like it's good to be open to possibilities and opportunities, Yeah, and I still kind of want to live that way.
Where do you see Slingshot in 5 or 10 years? Are you guys just going to hit the ground running once the pandemic's over? Have you got plans, to move into any other markets across the world other than Asia?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I want to get back into, presenting tours in Australia and some in Asia, hopefully later this year or if not next year. But I've also started a new thing, which is collectible action figures. So I'm starting to make hip hop action figures.
Really?
Yeah, because it's been something I've been into. Like, people that know me know that I've got a pretty big collection of hip hop action figures.
Interesting. I think I saw maybe two behind your left shoulder there.
A few here in the hotel room. So I've been a collector for many years. I kind of I don't know, just sort of stumbled on it and kind of there's people, I mean, obviously within hip hop, the big thing is, I mean, the most prevalent thing of collecting is collecting vinyl, is record collectors. But for me, I kind of just discovered, I kind of I just kind of discovered hip hop action figures and became kind of like a side kind of hobby, in recent months. And people can go check out on Instagram. They can check out just at Hip Hop Toys. Yeah, and if they check out at Hip Hop Toys, they'll see lots of examples of what I'm talking about. But just in recent times, I've started working on trying to release some of my own designs and make a little collectible toy company. Yeah.
Wow. And get them manufactured and packaged and everything like that.
Yeah, at the moment they're handmade in America, and but
That's really cool, man.
We might have them in the future. But
who have you chosen to do the sort of prototypes of?
We just released a Cool Keith Dr. Octagon figure, which did really
Okay.
well. We've got I'll give you the scoop as well on the next figure that no one knows about yet, but we're doing a Rakim action figure,
Sick. Fuck yeah.
which will be dope. And there's a few there's quite a few in the works. Some of them are licensed by the artist, and some of them are just super limited edition bootleg. With the limited edition bootlegs, we might only do like 20 hand numbered figures, and that's it.
Yeah, right.
It's more just like a tribute to the artist, and because we're a real fan, But obviously, the ones that are licensed by the artist, then we'll do like a bigger run, and the artist will promote it. And it's just something, I don't know. It's just kind of a passion project, but I'm trying to turn it into a little side business as well. Yeah, check it out on Instagram. It's my page. It's mostly it's my collection and of all different stuff, and then I promote a few other people's action figures. So there's kind of like a subculture at the moment that's definitely growing of toy makers just doing these bootleg kind of mashup action figures of hip hop artists. If people are at all interested, the big one to check out is called Trap Toys, TRAPTOYS. So they're out of the UK, and they're doing some amazing kind of mashup hip hop toys. Yeah, but yeah, if they check out my page called Hip Hop Toys on Instagram, you'll kind of see my private collection, and then kind of get an idea what we're working on as well. Kind of we put out kind of the that's where we sell the action figures that we're going to release as well in the future.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to get my hands on something, man. Man, it looks like you got a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool stuff on there, just for people that, into hip hop, it's just something fun to have in your home, in your bedroom, wherever, just have it on a bookshelf, in amongst, vinyls or whatever, Cool to give as gifts as well to like, friends that are into hip hop and stuff like that. And so, so I'm getting involved with that. And then that hopefully will lead on to some kind of, maybe into some NFT stuff and things like that as well,
Interesting. Yeah. Have you been looking into the digital art space? Do you know much about that sort of world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty new to it all and trying to wrap my head around it all. But the plan is with these hip hop action figures is to get into that world a little bit as well.
Yeah, like with your book, how you've got the QR, excuse me, the QR codes in the book. I think that's a really good example of these two sort of worlds mixed together that works beautifully. Having that QR code and watching interviews. That's where I sort of see this NFT stuff with a physical product, having some sort of digital equivalent to add to the value of a physical product seems the way that it's going to go. And it's really cool, like to buy something and you get something extra with it. It seems like a good function of all the, that new sort of shit coming out.
Yeah, man. Well, that's our idea with these hip hop action figures is to somehow have a digital element and the physical. Both of them are collectible in their own ways,
That's exciting, man. No, good to hear.
So that's something pretty cool and different that, I've always liked to try and, I don't know, try and not compete with people too much. I like to just try and create something kind of new or different or, and kind of enjoy the challenge and the struggle that brings, but then also enjoy the rewards that it brings, of satisfaction of doing something, like that, rather than just sort of copying too much what other people are doing.
No, definitely, man. Yeah, totally understood. Listen, man, I want to ask you one last question. Would you have any advice that you would give to an emerging artist or someone that's looking into getting into promoting or managing or getting involved with hip hop or music, maybe, away from the microphone, like we were talking before, or away from the spray can, but still wants to be involved? Is there anything that you've sort of learned over your 3 decades that you could impart to someone that's sort of earlier on in the journey?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's something I guess I need to think about, in more detail, but just off the top, it's, I think it's a little bit what I was just saying, I think it's good to try and find your own voice, try and find your own contribution to to the culture and to the movement, you know, and whatever that's going to be. I mean, it's awesome if you can develop a skill in emceeing or skill in, you know, in DJing or you know, in writing or breaking is awesome. And but I also think it's you know, I think it's equally as important or relevant to, you know, yeah, maybe find other ways you can contribute as well, you know, whether it's through photography or video clip making or you know, yeah, like helping a friend who's maybe an MC and who you see has got potential, build with them and become their manager or you know. So I think there's so many ways to get involved, you know, with hip hop and the culture. I think it's endless, and and I think that's kind of, I think it's exciting, and I think that's almost, I think, kind of what like hip hop needs more of in a way. You know, I mean, I would never discourage anyone from you know, trying to be an MC is great, but obviously there's a lot of MCs out there doing it, which is awesome. But you know, I think there's no harm in having more people involved, you know, a bit more behind the scenes as well, you know, just to help the whole thing grow bigger and better, you know. So I think that would be my advice is you know, like kind of find something that represents your interest and passion. It might be something that's not connected to hip hop, but then if you're also a fan of hip hop, you may be able to merge those two worlds together, you know.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of like what I kind of did. So I guess from my perspective, that would be, you know, advice I would give from a first-hand experience, and also from first-hand experiences, you know, just getting involved in it, not just, you know, I mean, for the right reasons, you know, because there's always going to be challenges, you know, but if you're into something because you're into it from a being passionate, then it's going to get you through the challenging times, you know.
Well said, man. Yeah.
Like if you only get involved in something just to make some money or just to try and get famous or something like that, it's going to be pretty tough, you know, because you're going to go through tough times that may make you just sort of give up, you know. But if you're involved because you really, you know, love it or passionate about it and believe in what you're doing, then you'll get through the tough times, you know.
I appreciate that, man. I can imagine there's been some moments of doubt over the past 30 years, and you're exactly right. You seem like a really passionate guy, and that's the type of thing that gets you through those tough times, man. Yeah.
And also just being real, I guess, with yourself and with other people, you know, just being kind of honest and just trying to be and just being sincere about your intentions, you know. Yeah, I mean, of course, people appreciate honesty and they appreciate integrity and longevity. You know, like for me, I'm like, you know, I definitely, you know, I give respect and props to people that have been involved with something for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
but obviously, if you're just getting started in something, that's cool as well because your passion and your motivation can shine through. You know.
Listen, bro, I first of all, as I said before, I want to thank you for your time. And I think more importantly, I want to thank you for all the work you've done over 25, 30 years, bringing artists here and highlighting artists in Australia as well. And everything you've done, man, I've got so much respect for you. And, you know, your shows, I'm sure I've been to a few of them, and I'm sure a lot of people listening have as well. So I want to thank you for everything you've done, man. And I wish you all the best, brother. And I hope you're not going too crazy over there in lockdown.
I appreciate the opportunity from you for sure.
Yeah, awesome, man. I look forward to the book. I'll certainly be getting a copy.
Yeah, please, anyone listening that's, you know, that is interested, you know, grab a copy of the book because I think you'll something different for Australia, definitely.
Thank you for listening to the Lead Poison Podcast.
yeah? Huh? Okay. Huh?